Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, your host. Glad you could join me as we venture into the woods and waters, onto the prairie, and, well, anywhere else we can find upland birds and good-looking dogs. A little bit of a switch this week. We're going to talk with somebody who's well known as a big game hunter, but also as an advocate for and a intense user of public lands. We'll get some advice on how we can do a better job of accessing that land that, hey, it's your land and my land. Randy Newberg joins me. You know him from Fresh Tracks TV or On Your Own Adventures. He's got a podcast himself, and he's all sorts of things when it comes to public ground and big game hunting, but he's also a avid upland hunter. We'll talk long and hard about the things that are important to us, especially when it comes to public access. Our Fix It segment, I'm going to make an argument for more open chokes in the field. Hopefully you'll get some ideas there. And then I asked you all on social media about bells on a dog collar and whether they scare birds. So we'll discuss that at length as well. Yeah, the Upland Nation podcast is brought to you by Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, TrulockChokes tubes, Purina Pro Plan Sport dog food, Sage and Breaker gun care products, RuffLand dog kennels, pointer shotguns, Heartland Lodge, and HiViz sights. Well, the day before we started this project, this training project at this point, we jump-started it. How's that? Flick and I, as you know, are working on covey flushes, popcorn flushes, and it was time to start reintroducing shots and falling birds. But I'd forgotten to thaw a pigeon from the freezer, so I thought, well, I'll put it off another day. And sure enough, as some of the birds are flying from our simulated covey flush, remember I'm using those, the bird bags. They work great for that. One of the birds I picked was a little young, didn't quite know what was going on, walked out great. Flick got some good practice on steadiness as a bird is waddling around, 20 yards in front of him. Yeah, he's really extending his pointing distance, and I'm liking that too. But once that bird did fly, it flew about, another 20 yards, and Flick watched it land and just stood there quivering. I'm thinking, proud father here. I probably ought to get away while I can. And sure enough, the bird then finally kind of flew off again, but not after a good long practice session for Flick on a wing shot and fall. Yeah, so let's hope it keeps working that way until we get to bird season. I was, I've always been interested in this subject, and I've asked several people about it, and that is this whole idea of collar bells. You grouse hunters in particular are big on this stuff, and I don't blame you. There was a point in time when we had no other choice. If we wanted to know where our dog was, especially in the thick stuff, what are we going to do? Well, the bell was a good solution, and it's become kind of almost a tradition, old school style. Yes, there are choices now, but nobody can answer this question very well, but it wasn't the question I asked. I was wondering, if a bell works so well to tell us where the dog is, when the dog goes on point, it stops ringing. I guess that's an incentive to continue listening to that dog bell and not gabbing with your hunting partner the whole time. So the moment you hear it, you're on it. Maybe that ought to be a question as well. But I did get some good ones. I asked fundamentally, do bells on a collar scare the birds? And Scott Kragerud says, I like a good distant donk, donk, donk of a well-made Swiss bell. I know the feeling. Maybe it's because I was a musician. I'm not sure, Scott, but thank you. John Kozlowski says, yeah, I use bells. Beepers alert birds. Well, we'll get that argument started pretty soon. That's also on the social pages. James Fritz uses a small bell on his Springer because it's sometimes hard to keep track in the thick or high stuff. Yeah, on a flushing dog, seems to make a lot of sense. I used a bell in the past, says Lex LeBlanc. By the way, that would be a great 30s movie star name, Lex. Used a bell in the past. Now, because of electronics, don't use it, but doesn't think it's a big deal. Scott Veeder used them in the past, never had issues scaring the birds. I now use reflective collars to help me see my dogs. Yeah, that does help. Not in the stuff out behind my place, but maybe where you are. Beepers are expensive. Well, they don't have to be. Yes, compared to a bell, absolutely. David Kelly, nope, they do not scare birds, and they allow me to track my dog. And when the bell stops, he's locked up. There you go, my theory fulfilled. Michael Augelio, I use them in the grouse woods, and we find birds, something about the bell ringing in the woods that I just like. There's a lot of nostalgia there, and I understand that. Tim Williams says, yeah, it does scare the birds, lets them know where the dog is. But one reason birds hold tight is not knowing where the dog is. Yeah, it makes sense as well. Gary Brolier is glad that we asked the question. They hear it. Are they bothered by it? One of my good friends uses a beeper collar on his setter that only, the beeps when she points. But does that mean a bell doesn't bother them? I don't know. Well, apparently not, according to all the experts in-house today. But then Kevin McLaughlin says noise of any kind scares birds. You'll still get the occasional stupid young bird if you're in a decent habitat, but educated and pressured birds are getting out of the way quickly and quietly. Yeah, interesting. Joe Rundell uses a small brass bell, not the cowbell type. Yeah, I got a couple as a gift a while back, and thank you, Billy, by the way. I like the little ones, and so does Flick. The big ones are, I don't know, a little loud, and Joe, you say the little ones are a little quieter. Without it, I find myself watching the GPS too much. Yeah, aren't we all guilty of that? You can walk, it's just like a cell phone on a city sidewalk. You can walk around looking at the dang thing until you crash into a lamppost or a big tree, or you fall into a badger hole. So another good reason right there. Well, thanks for all your suggestions, thought starters, and other ideas from that. I sure appreciate it. Good stuff. And that segment of the show brought to you by HiViz Sights. See what you've been missing. Yeah, nobody else has anything like these interlocking light pipes. They're patented. You can easily switch out the colors if you need to for environment or lighting conditions. And you never lose the bead while you're focusing on the target. It works for me. See if it'll work for you. Watch the video at HiVizSights.com. And put one of those sights on your new Pointer shotgun. If you're shopping for a semi-auto, take a long look at that FT12, the new FT12 semi-auto from Pointer Shotguns. I just did a video. It's up now. Take a look. See the kind of some of the specs and my newfound appreciation for those semi-auto shotguns. They do have some advantages. Take a look at the video and see what I mean. It's on all the social media. If you're looking for a youth model for a younger hunter, they've got a grand stock right now, and they are shoving them out to the retailers as quickly as they can. Those retailers include Bass Pro, Sportsman's Warehouse, Cabela's, and Turner's Outdoorsman, and of course, hundreds of independent, locally owned retail gun dealers carry Pointer shotguns. Learn more at pointershotguns.com. This is the season of embarrassment for me. I admitted off mic again to our guest today that I can't believe we haven't spoken before. We share a sponsor, Legacy Sports, Pointer Shotguns for me, Howa Rifles for him. And he's an upland hunter of some renown, but you know him as a big game guy. His name is Randy Newberg. He's all over the media, and he's a real hero to a lot of people, including some of you, I bet. Randy Newberg, welcome to the Upland Nation podcast.
Oh, Scott, thanks for having me. It's so funny. We've been on these parallel paths for 18 years, and we've probably been at the same places at the same time, and we're just both so busy that it's taken us this long to actually have a conversation and the world gets to hear it.
Yeah. So let's just pretend we're carrying on from our last conversation, which will ultimately end up in another conversation, I'm sure. In fact, watch out. I'm headed your way in a couple weeks, so stand by.
Oh, okay.
I'll give you plenty of warning so you can leave town. Like me, in fact, I was thinking about this yesterday afternoon. Like me, you came to this world from an unusual place. Give me a little bit of the Randy Newberg story.
Yeah, growing up in northern Minnesota and being a fanatic rough grouse hunter, I wanted to live out west. So I went to college in Reno. And then ended up in Bozeman, Montana in 1991 as a CPA, tax accountant. People ask me what I do for work. I say I disinherit the federal treasury. But that always makes you a big fan, no matter what they think of you. If you tell them you disinherit the federal treasury, they give you a lot of slack.
Nice.
So in 2008, I decided to start some media platforms to try give a little more voice to the whole cause of public lands. And I told my wife, this will just last. I'll probably do it for 2 or 3 years. Well, here we are 17 years later.
Okay, so the big question is she still with you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
She's all on board with this whole media stuff. She's really big into conservation and public access and the future of hunting. She just is the most quiet, modest person in the world. So if you send me an email, she's the one who's going to put it in one of the folders of urgent, not urgent, sponsor, whatever. So she keeps me on the road. And sometimes she sends me out the door and says, you go tell them what I'm thinking. So that's kind of how I ended up in this situation. I feel blessed that this is my adult life. I don't know if I've grown up yet, but if I have, this is what I decided to do when I grew up.
Well, if you're like me, you decided long ago to act your IQ instead of your age.
Well, that's not much higher than my shoe size, so I don't know. Maybe I am acting. Given my low IQ, maybe I am.
Well, most people know you for some aspect of your media persona, and I mean that in the best way, because everybody thinks we act different when we're not in front of a camera. But I like to pretend, at least, that I'm the same guy, and I think you are too. But tell us about all the things you're doing in media and how we can watch you.
Yeah, well, my wife would say, with him, what you see is what you get. And it just is what it is. But, we have most of our stuff is focused in the big game world. We have a big YouTube channel called Fresh Tracks. I do a podcast called the Hunt Talk Radio Podcast. I do another big game podcast called the Elk Talk Podcast with my co-host, Corey Jacobson. And then there's, the normal Instagram, Facebook stuff. I got to confess, Scott, I don't know how to do social media. That's why I have a 30-year-old who works here, takes care of all that for me. And you can find me out there at I think it's called, those handles are Randy Newberg Hunter. But hopefully you'll find me gallivanting around the West, hunting big game. And when I'm not doing that, I'm usually trying to stir up the pot to make sure that elected officials have understanding that hunters and conservation and the funding and the advocacy we support and provide is something that they need to listen to. And that's, I don't know any other way to say it. The importance of being engaged, and I call it stand up and speak up, is very important in today's world. And I'm happy to do that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and I came from a career in politics before I got into all of this, and so I know of what you speak, and I purposely stayed away from it for a long, long time, but I keep getting dragged back into it, and this last big, beautiful bill argument got me a little bit more involved now. But what about you? What are you doing in that arena? And what advice would you have for us?
Yeah, this year's been a pretty busy year. I've been to D.C. twice this summer. And I'm very fortunate that I live in Montana, or a small state. And so we have access to our elected officials that you would never get in a state with millions of people. And so it's a unique position that I'm lucky to have through that. And I'm mostly, I don't, I have zero use for parties. So I'm just there making sure that people on all sides understand the perspectives that hunters bring to this discussion, because my audience, I think they, like all people, right, we're so inundated with media that we don't know what's true, what's not true. And they are counting on me to filter that out for them. And so it requires a lot of work. 25 years of going back there and building relationships, I guess, has given me some insight that maybe the average person is not going to see. And so I don't have to rely on the news headlines or whatever. I can pick up the phone, make a call, and I can get the real facts. And I think my audience trusts that. And I'm not going to ask them to get wound up and take action unless I think it's, the real deal. So what people can do, I always say, is be aware. And when the time comes, as much as you said you came from politics, I always had this, I don't do politics mindset. I never wanted to do politics. And I always say, I like policy, but not politics. But I'm sure both of our audiences have some of that same feeling of, I don't do politics. And so I get that, but there are times where we have to speak up as a collective group, for the funding of the things we love, to make sure the money and excise taxes that we pay get spent in the places that it's supposed to. When attacks come against the things we love, hunting and shooting, we need to be supporting those groups, because we do have some very effective groups that are representing our interests. And I always tell, I'll get a comment, well, they took a position on this and I don't agree with them with that position. And I tell them, well, if I had to use a litmus test that I only supported groups I agreed with 100% of the time, I'm not even sure I could support myself.
Yeah, exactly right. And that
agree with myself.
Well, that is kind of the number one rule of politics. It makes for strange bedfellows. Sometimes you're allies with people you really don't like, and vice versa. But you gotta look at the bigger picture, and that is absolutely true. I remember sitting in a room. It's been a long time ago, when the bow hunters didn't like what the hound hunters were doing, and the fly fishers thought the salmon fishers. It just went on and on. Everybody's got a gripe with everybody, but there are some things we can agree on. And I guess we should look at it this way. This issue that Senator Lee put in to the big beautiful bill, and I use air quotes for that, it did unite us. And what we should do with that is not lose it. We should
Right.
stay in, and that's kind of what I'm doing now. I'm writing some essays on that just to remind people that we need to stay aware.
Yeah, that's a really good example, Scott, when you think about, we argue about why did Knox or, that can you bait fish or do you got to use artificial? The amount of energy we spend fighting amongst ourselves has the folks contrary to our interests just laughing.
Yeah.
They can't believe that we will fight and argue and eat our young, so to speak. And the whole time they're out there making progress from their side. And I think what happened in June and early July with that Senate bill showed all of us what we can do when we all just set the differences aside and put our shoulder to the wheel and say, you know what, we're going to push this wagon forward. And it was impressive, and I hope we can keep that perspective, and I hope that we do that, because we got a lot of issues. We can make a lot of progress right now, and if we keep our eye on the ball, we will.
There you go. Benjamin Franklin said, if we don't all hang together, we will hang separately. And it's absolutely true. And you pointed something out that, back in the day, I did a lot of what we used to call opposition research. And some of that was on the ground stuff. I know how they work, those folks who are working against us. You mentioned eating our young, and that's exactly right. Caesar Augustus said, divide and conquer. Well, they're still using his playbook.
Yeah, and we're falling for it.
Yeah, we are, and we got to be careful.
Are you going to make it to Montana bird hunting this year?
Yes. Like I said, watch out.
I have been out this summer, this spring, and some of your audience might be, shut up, Newberg.
Yeah.
It's the best hatch of sharptail I have ever seen in my 34 years of living in Montana.
Well, I'm encouraged by that, and thank you for the great segue. It's been true. In fact, just a few weeks ago, I looked, and there was the second brood from the same parents of California quail out in my country. So we're seeing it in a lot of places, and again, I don't want to get too googly-eyed about it, but that's great news. Is that, being where you are in Montana, is that what you do, or do you go up into the hills and chase a forest grouse?
Well, I'm usually chasing forest grouse when I'm supposed to be chasing elk. But if I see a rough grouse and there's an elk bugling, I'm going to go after that rough grouse. Yeah. Because that elk keep bugling for at least another hour. But that rough grouse, once he disappears, I'm probably not going to get him. Yeah. So I see those while I'm doing a lot of my hiking here in the summer. And we had such a wet spring in this part of Montana. I've really not seen a very good crop of mountain grouse.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, I spend a lot of my time in the summer out on the prairie. I do a lot of walleye fishing out in eastern and northeast Montana, so it gives me opportunity to be there. And the drought that they're having up in what we call Region 6, far northern and northeast Montana, that's probably the one exception to what I've said there about such a great crop. There's been no cover. It's just unbelievably dry, and all the, a lot of dry land grain and other farming up there. It's really bad. But you get south of the Missouri River, and the Missouri River should not be any sort of influence on weather patterns, but you just look at the amount of moisture that kind of in the southern and eastern part of Montana has been immense this year. You go 100 miles north, and they've been missing most of it. So I guess when I say that it's going to be a great sharptail year, I would say with the exception of maybe far northeast Montana.
Well, I'm headed for Region 5, I think. So
good there. They've been great. A lot of cover, a lot of birds. So
good.
Yeah.
Well, tell me more about your bird hunting. I mean, what is it about? Yeah, because dispel the myth. I mean, you're out there in camouflage all the time, whispering to cameras and things like that.
Yeah.
But you wear your fair share of blaze orange, and you hunt upland birds. What is it about the upland bird hunting that pulls you away from big game hunting?
Oh, so many things. Having grown up, the first thing I was ever able to hunt was rough grouse. Uh-huh. And there's a thing about birds that I've been fascinated by birds since a little kid. You see this animal that can fly, and they're amazing colors, and they have weird behavior. And so I was always fascinated by it. And my dad's passion in life was grouse hunting.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I him as a little kid, even before I could hunt. And I said I went to college. I graduated from college in Reno, but in the interim, I did 2 years at Arizona State. And I majored in dove and quail hunting while there. I was the most derelict, truant student. I say I enrolled. My attendance wasn't that good because dove season opened September 1st, about the time class started. And not long after that, quail season would open. And I got addicted to quail hunting. We didn't have quail in Minnesota, and these were all Gamble's quail I was hunting because, as a college student, I didn't need a dog, or I couldn't have a dog. So you don't necessarily need one for Gamble's quail.
Yeah.
Merns and scales, you're going to definitely want a dog. So I was about as redneck hillbilly as you could be and still quail hunt. And so after 2 years, they told me, Mr. Newberg, you appear to be less interested in your education than we are. So I had to take a year off. And in the interim, I moved to Reno, Carson City. And then I found this thing called chucker. And to me, chucker is like elk hunting with a shotgun.
Yeah.
But it's even more frustrating because if you got a little skiff of snow, you see their tracks heading up the mountain sometimes, or you hear them up there. And you climb up there and you flush them and you get like one shot before they fly all the way back down to the bottom where you just came from. It's like, this is work, but if you're one of these people like you and I probably are wired where we take that as a challenge, it's like, I'm going to get some of these little buggers.
Yeah.
And I look at rough grouse, I look at quail, I look at chucker, I look at pheasants, and I don't know if there's a better table fare on the planet than those little birds. And I love to eat them. That's the other part. And I've never had a true upland pointing dog. I've always had labs, which isn't, and that, I also did a lot of waterfowl hunting, and that's why I had labs. I have friends who have some amazing dogs. And if people watch our content, they will see that I go down to Arizona every winter and chase quail. My buddy Wade Zarlingo, who was a college buddy while I was down there, he has some amazing poodle pointers, and we always connect and go quail hunting for a few days, and man, it brings back some great memories. I just love chasing those quail.
Well, I don't blame you one bit, and you're getting me all goose pimply already. And so watch out.
Yeah,
it's incredible to kind of hear somebody else describe the same things that I'm feeling, and that a lot of our listeners are feeling at the same time. It is just. We're just getting warmed up here, everybody, on the Upland Nation podcast. By the way, that's Randy Newberg. I'm Scott Linden. Before we take a break, though, I do want to start the discussion about public land and public access. One of the priorities that many of us have is finding new ground. How to do it, what to do when we get there. that sort of thing. Give us one tantalizing tidbit before the break on how you look for new ground. And if put yourself in your TV producer mode as well. Whether it's big game, upland birds, even waterfowl, where do you start the process?
Yeah, my process is always, where does the other person not want to go?
Yeah.
Whether that's elk hunting or deer hunting or bird hunting. And I'll admit, growing up in places where there were a lot of these little 80-acre parcels, 200-acre parcels, I hunt a lot of these really small parcels. And now with digital maps, they're so easy to find. Whereas before, you weren't quite sure where the boundaries were. Did it touch the road where I could access it? People ask me what's the most revolutionary thing in hunting in my lifetime, and I would say digital maps.
Oh yeah,
it has changed everything about how we do it, and it opens up opportunities that before were just hard to find.
I couldn't agree more. When I came here and when I started making TV, it was fly fishing, and I did the same thing there. And I haven't changed a bit, and I think that's a golden piece of advice. Look to the smaller little splotches on those maps, or the funny little squares that nobody knows about. That's a good way to start a commercial break. That's Randy Newberg. I'm Scott Linden. This is the Upland Nation podcast. We'll be back with more from Randy in just a moment. And then our Fix It segment, I'm going to convince you to open your chokes just a little bit more, I hope. So stand by, Randy. We'll be right back. This portion of the show brought to you by Pro Plan Sport Dog Food by Purina. Yeah, only one brand fuels the most sporting dog champions. Yeah, if you're out to win your game too, take a look at ProPlansport.com. Find a formula that works for you. They're all complete and balanced nutrition, nutrient dense, high protein, real meat as the first ingredient, all designed to give your dog increased endurance in the field. See what I mean? Learn about the science behind the nutrition like I did. Go to ProPlansport.com. And once you're there, you don't want your gun to be ugly, let alone malfunctioning. And that's where sageandbreaker.com comes in. Gun cleaning and care products of all sorts. Some great videos on how to take care of your shotgun. Everything comes with a lifetime warranty. And did I mention everything's in stock right now? Those brand new bridle leather choke tube cases, bridle leather shot shell cases all ready. Yeah, they're heirloom quality. Take a look at the videos. Take a look at the rest of the offerings at sageandbreaker.com. Welcoming back to the Upland Nation podcast. I don't know how to describe you in a couple words. Randy Newberg, everybody probably knows your name. They know you for many of the things you're doing in the big game world. He's also one of us, everybody. We will talk more about upland bird hunting with the big game guy, Randy Newberg. But beyond all that, you were on something that was really, really interesting to me, and that is how you choose places to go, starting with the small places. All right, so are there other aspects of that? For example, I advocate a lot for don't just look at Forest Service ground, or don't just look at BLM land. There's all sorts of other agencies that manage land on our behalf. Yeah.
You look at some of my favorite places to bird hunt are U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service refuges. While everybody else is waterfowl hunting, I'm walking around there flushing pheasants and sharptail and Hungarians, and they're just. I use the same approach when I'm elk hunting. How is 90? If you look at a map and say 90% of the hunters are going to look at it this way, where is that other 10% that is probably going to be underhunted, have better numbers, whether it's deer, elk, birds, and fewer people? The other thing that I often look at is sometimes there's a narrow strip, and this is one that comes to mind. There's a long, narrow strip and about 1.5 miles out there, then it connects to a much bigger strip. So it's kind of a pathway through private on both sides. That's a narrow strip of BLM. But once I get back out there, I have about 4 square miles. And I think distance sometimes keeps people from doing it. If they can't just drive there and, grab their bow or grab their rifle or throw the dogs out of the kennel and get going, they go look for someplace else.
Amen. Yeah. You know Jim Zumbo, I'm sure. Jim Zumbo, years ago when I worked with him at Outdoor Life magazine, his most popular seminar was called Easy Elk. And he might have come up with the trope. The best elk is the one 50 yards from the road. But he also told me something that rings true with what you just described, and that is, look at where everybody else went and go somewhere else because they're pushing all the game out of where they are.
Yep, absolutely. It's funny you bring up Jim's name. I was just at his house 2 weeks ago and did a podcast with him.
I love it.
Oh, yeah. What a great guy. He's been such a friend and mentor for a long time. But, he's, that's great advice. And I don't care whether it's, waterfowl hunting, whether it's upland bird, whether it's big game. That's a general rule that applies. And I think the other thing that a lot of folks overlook are some of the state walk-in areas. Like I go to Kansas, and their walk-in hunting area is very impressive.
Yeah.
One of it, and the number of acres and the amount of opportunity. And then Wyoming has walk-in hunting area. Montana has the block management areas. The Dakotas has their plots. There's a lot of parcels that are available that people just overlook. And I don't.
Well, it's funny. I had the chance to hunt in Kansas with the guy who managed their walk-in program, and they brought him in because he understood what it's really about. It's about us, we hunters. And he really opened my eyes to some of that. And you're absolutely right. And the same thing holds true. Smaller pieces here and there, or walk farther, as you said. I had a good friend, training buddy and everything here, whose best advice to me was walk a mile farther, and it's been true ever since. I live that mantra now. There are others, and just to get it off my chest, there are other places that we uplanders ignore quite often, and those are, you mentioned wildlife refuges. There's these waterfowl production areas, or I was on a couple wildlife areas managed by the state down in California a couple weeks ago. I was there for the fishing. Hey, everybody, if you're looking for great fishing spots, go to all these places that are managed for game.
Yeah.
But
never thought.
There's those, and there's, in a lot of states, they manage some, what they call school trust properties. And who knows what else in that world? BLM, the Bureau of Reclamation. And Corps of Engineer ground. I'm thinking about the Dakotas there up and down the Missouri River. There's some incredible pheasant and sharptail ground that nobody bothers with because it's next to a reservoir, for example. Yeah. So all of that and more.
It's always fun to bump into that occasional person when you're out there that has the same approach. And I'm like, how did you find this spot? And start talking like, well, I was going to ask you the same thing. And we start comparing notes, and we approach it the same way of where are people less likely to go, and that's where they head out to, and that's where I go, and we end up bumping into each other that way. But there's a ton of opportunity that's available, and that gets to the core of at this point in my life, I've had such an amazing American experience in hunting, and it's mostly because of public lands. And I cannot envision an America where future generations of hunters who are coming along behind me and my generation would not have these same opportunities. And that's really what drives me these days. I love being out there, but so many people did so much to make it possible that I could live a hunting life in America. I just feel obligated that I got to use my platforms and my lifetime of experience in DC and elsewhere to make sure these public lands are always going to be available to people.
And you're speaking almost macro level, 30,000 foot level, but people can do stuff on a local level, and I'm encouraging a lot of that, because it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to get pissed off at the guy who runs your local National Forest District than it is the guy who's in DC ensconced in an ivory tower, and you can have some impact at the local level. We better not go down that path, or we'll be here until tomorrow morning. But you make a good point, Scott. A lot of times your county commissioners will have sway or influence over what policy is being adopted on federal lands, or they have very often, your governor or your elected representative in Congress will be reaching out to county commissioners. There's just so many ways on a local level that you can have influence. You have your local rod and gun clubs that are usually very involved in the local policies that are happening in your backyard. And being a member of those is really helpful. I always tell people nothing gets the attention of an elected official or an employee of an agency than a handful of very informed, professional, and persistent hunters. I'm talking just a handful, like 5 or 6 of you. You can make a huge difference. And that's where we're at. There's a lot of competing interests for these lands, of the activities that go there. And you'll hear some people say, oh, well, we don't want hunters there because it scares us, or it's noisy or whatever. And our opportunity is as important and as valid as any other opportunity. So we got to be there even on the local level, representing our interest in our activity and the ability to do that. Because if we look at it, who's putting the most money, the most volunteerism, our nonprofit groups, all of our Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, DU, all of those volunteers put a lot of value of habitat back into those public lands, whether they're federal or state. And we deserve to be out there. And I don't want to see those opportunities diminished. Well, let me put a capper on that, and then we'll get down to brass tacks. I gave a speech to a fairly good-sized upland bird hunting organization a while back, and asked everybody, who funds wildlife management in this country? And the answers were taxpayers, hunting licenses, I don't know, Ducks Unlimited, Pheasants Forever. I said the biggest funder of wildlife management and conservation is a tax that you pay. Yeah. The Pittman-Robertson Act and I never can remember the name of the bill once it became law, but we're paying that excise tax on bullets, shot shells, firearms, bows, arrows, etc. That excise tax pays for virtually 90% of my state's wildlife management budget.
Yep. Yeah.
What that should do is empower everybody to realize, hey, I want my money's worth.
Yeah. So, I mean, that law was in place since 1937. And the official, we call it PR, Pittman Roberts, and the official name, if you see this little logo, it's called the Federal Aid and Wildlife Restoration Act. And sometimes you'll see, hey, this waterfowl production area partially funded by Federal Aid and Wildlife Restoration Act, which is exactly what you're referring to. Our wildlife refuges get a lot of funding through that. Access gets a lot of funding through that. And when I hear a lot of shooting going on, one of my friends, Jonathan Odell, said, "You hear that? That's the sound of conservation." He said, because the shot. Oh, there's money going to the Pittman Robertson Fund for that.
Every bullet is 11% of that bullet is tax dollars going to wildlife conservation.
Yeah.
I love it.
I remember when he told me that we were dove hunting in Yuma, Arizona. And Yuma is Dove Central opening day, and oh my gosh, you could hear it sounded like fireworks on the 4th of July, and he's just smiling. Sound of conservation, he said.
Yeah, fun to wildlife area. Miss more often.
Yeah,
I love it. All right, Randy Newberg, well known for on your own adventures. Randy is both an upland hunter and the big game hunter thing too. But this is the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. Randy, let's get down to the micro level on some things. Whether you're wearing camo and carrying a rifle or you got blaze orange and you got a shotgun in your hands, there are some things that you do as a well-prepared hunter, whether it's strategic or tactical. What are some of the things that you've learned and practice on a daily basis in the field that you want to share with us?
The thing I always focus on, and this has very little to do with tactics, but it has a lot to do with tactics and enjoying the day, is make sure you're having fun out there. Realize how great of an opportunity this is. And when you adopt that mindset, you're not going to care if it's raining or snowing or blowing or hot or whatever. And your mind is going to be ready for whatever the day offers. You're going to go out there, you're going to enjoy it, you're going to embrace whatever the conditions are. Because so often we can say, oh, it's too hot, I'm not going to go today. Or, I don't like to do this in the wind or whatever. And you kind of take yourself out of the game if you don't have your mind. I always say my mind is my most valuable tool when I'm out hunting. And my mind determines my attitude. So other than that, the biggest thing, all your upland audience talks about, hunt into the wind, right? Give the dog a chance. Well, same thing applies to big game hunting. There's so many things. And I always say, practice like you will play. I got archery elk season coming up here in a month, and I'm out there shooting and putting myself in situations where even though it's practice, this is the type of situation I would likely encounter if an elk encounter happened. The same with shooting sporting clays. If everything else is second nature to you about your equipment, about your gear, about, your form, your follow through, you don't have to think about those things when the opportunity comes. And so I'm really big about practice. And that's not a specific tactic, but it's a mindset of preparation so that when season comes, I'm ready to go. I'm sure so many of your listeners are helping fund conservation over the summer when they're out at this, skeet range or the sporting clays range. Those are where the skills and the, just repetitive follow through make you more successful out in the field.
I can't agree more. I remember making a show in Kentucky of all places, and I hunted one day with a guy, and he was using a semi-automatic shotgun, and I got nothing against them. In fact, I'm just learning more about them in the last few weeks. But he knew his shotgun so well. I just stopped and admired how much like, the Marine Corps tells us, every man's a rifleman, every Marine is a rifleman. And you got to be able to strip it and put it back together in the dark. Yeah, this guy, he could do everything. And I just really acquired a new appreciation for somebody who knows their tool that well. You alluded to another tool that's a little bit more new school, and I bet you've got a tip or two for us when we're using our online mapping app. I'm learning something every week with mine.
Yeah. Yeah, for big game, I do what's called e-scouting. I didn't come up with that term. Someone else, I was doing seminars, and someone else was like, hey, can you show me how to do this e-scouting in a video? So that's the first time I heard it. So I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And I do more scouting at home than I do out on the road. And a lot of people equate big game hunting to, hey, you got to go and scout, a month before or whatever. Well, I'm traveling all over the country for our content, and I don't have time to drive there and scout. So I have learned about how to use the layers, how to use, the vegetation layers, the slope layers, and just e-scouting. You can go to the moisture patterns, any place on the plant, at least in the U.S., you can go to the moisture maps. And when you do that, the reason I do that for big game is that's where the most lush vegetation is going to grow. And so that is where cow elk are going to go, because they get the greatest nutrition for the least amount of effort. Well, in the rut, that's where the bull elk are going to be also. And I use the same thing for bird hunting. That's where the best cover is going to be. That's where the thickest cover is going to be. And when hunting pressure starts and it gets a little later in the season and those birds have been pressured, they're mostly going to be in that thicker cover, which is a function a lot of times of where has the most moisture occurred. So in Arizona, quail hunting, that's very, very valid and probably would be in any arid state. Some places get better monsoon moisture than others, and that's where the quail are going to be. That's where the chukar are going to be. So you can get all of that through e-scouting, as I call it. And I spend hours and hours, like just this morning while I was drinking my coffee, I'm e-scouting for this elk hunt I have that starts September 1st. That's why I say these digital maps have been the game changer of hunting. And I don't care if it's waterfowl, upland bird, big game. You can do it from home. If you have 15 minutes, you can get in a little scouting time.
In the back before there was mapping apps, there was these big pieces of paper with all sorts of lines and colors on them. You've heard about maps? I'd put one on the wall, and same thing. I'd pour a coffee and I'd stand in front of that thing and I'd think, I've never been up that canyon. Maybe I should do that instead of what I always do when I'm over there. And it's the same thing, but it's right there in the palm of your hand now. Yeah.
Can I confess that I see a file cabinet full of surface maps?
Yeah.
I haven't used them for 10 or 15 years, but I'm just so attached to them because I did exactly what you said. I don't know if upstairs we have what's called the Randy room. And I don't know if anyone ever knew what color the carpet was because I had the whole floor papered with surface maps. And I don't want to throw them away because on the margins on the side, I'd have some game warden's phone number or a taxidermist's phone number. And I'm sure all those old phone numbers are defunct, but I don't know. It's just part of my history of becoming a hunter, and I refuse to get rid of them. And my wife is asking me continually, "Can we get rid of that file cabinet?" Nope.
Yeah, a lot of memories there. I can relate to that. I have some of those maps that have different names for some of the peaks because we've all gone politically correct. Those ought to be a historical artifact. Randy, you're out there all the time. You're doing all of this stuff. And in the course of this, you have got at least a couple pieces of gear that that would be of value to us if we were carrying them as well. And I ask that question a lot, and everybody will tell me, yeah, bring more water, especially for the dogs. So skip water. We all agree. But it might be something you use on a big game hunt that you've never even thought about bringing it on a bird hunt. But what are you carrying in the field that might be of interest or of value to us?
Yeah, I get asked this so much. People ask me to do a pack dump or a bag dump.
Oh, yeah.
And I just shake my pack upside down and everything falls out, and I forget about half the things that I have in there. One of the things, and this is the recent trend of, digital maps now being available on our phones. I always have a very small battery pack that I can plug into my phone and recharge it. Cause I have my tracking on all the time. And when you're running tracks, it eats up a lot more of your battery. So that's one thing I always have with me. And I know maybe with upland bird hunters, maybe they're coming back to a vehicle and recharging, or maybe they're not making as big a loops as I am. But with big game hunting, and even in that habit when I'm bird hunting, I just like to see how many miles I walk that day. So I leave my tracks on all the time.
Yeah.
And that eats down my battery. So I carry a little, the Jackery makes one that I use. And so I have that. The other thing, I always have at least one or two protein or nutrition bars. And people are like, well, why not a candy bar? Why even bother with that? As I've gotten older, I've realized that nutrition throughout the day is huge, and it weighs hardly anything. And if I'm starting to feel groggy or wore down or just don't have that energy, it's usually because my body is saying, you know what, we need a shot of calories here. So those are probably two things that when I shake out my pack, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to go without those. In the big game world, we're usually going in before daylight and coming out in the dark. So a headlamp is always one I never go without, but I haven't really encountered that with upland bird and stuff, because it's not that urgent that you be out there before shooting light. But I would say that, and then I always have a little fix-it kit in case something goes wrong with my firearm or my bow. It just has a few bits and pieces. Gerber makes this one called the center drive, and I just have it, and I make sure I have some additional bits that don't come with that center drive that I know are going to fit for the hex screws on my shotgun or maybe my rifle scope or whatever. I don't like to get out there and have the possibility of something going wrong and not have a way to salvage the hunt.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, absolutely.
My pointer over and under shotgun that I hunt upland birds with, it doesn't have a lot of moving parts. I'd have to almost go out of my way to break it.
Don't jinx it.
Yeah. That instance, is probably not that applicable. But if I was shooting a semi-automatic or when I'm shooting a bow, bows seem to have more screws and bolts and nuts. They're like a vehicle. They got so many places where something can get loose. So when I'm archery hunting, I always make sure I have that. But
I love it. I might just add one more thing to that list, and I was reminded of it not a week ago. We carry a lot of water, but even at that point, sometimes in some situations, especially early in the season, we need to supplement the water with some electrolyte solution of one sort or another. Especially if you're prone to leg cramps like some of us, that is probably the best solution of all. So take a look at some of those things as well. And I can't echo more loudly your idea of something beyond a candy bar. The quick energy of a simple carbohydrate is good, but the balanced delivery of those calories with some fat, some protein, and some carbohydrate does do a lot better job.
Yeah. And there's a reason for that. It's sometimes I just have a handful of cashews and some M&Ms, or a small trail mix bag, just something that is not just sugar. And these days are special. I want to give it all I can all day long. I don't want to take for granted that I'm going to get to do this in perpetuity, because we all have an end to our days. And I say that hunting, whether it's big game or upland bird, it's like you're driving down the road and every day is a mile marker, but your vehicle in life doesn't have reverse. You don't get to go back up and redo that. It only has one direction, and it's forward. And I want to make the most out of every one of those mileposts that I'm going past, and being able to give it a hard day, or as hard as what my health allows. I never regret that, because I don't know how many more days or how many of those I have ahead of me. And I don't want to take that for granted. And I know that's kind of a philosophical tangent to nutrition and being able to give it your best shot. But to me, that's super important.
Words to live by from a guy who's living the life we all wish we could live. That's Randy Newberg. Randy, if we want to learn more about what you're up to these days, what's the best social media platform for us to chase you down?
Well, our largest audience is on Facebook, but I'm in Facebook jail right now. You ever been in? Yeah.
Yes, I have. I'm on parole right now. Yeah.
It tells me out of Facebook jail on August 28th.
Oh my!
Yeah, I would not suggest posting videos about how to clean a firearm. Someone at Facebook gets offended by that. But so right now, I tell people, if you want to know what I'm up to, my crew keeps a pretty good update on our activities out on Instagram. We have two of them there: Randy Newberg Hunter, which is me personally, and then Fresh Tracks TV, which is kind of the entire crew and what our platforms are doing. And then we have another very large online forum called hunttalk.com. And I'm a regular out there. There's a lot of people out there. The folks who are really interested in public lands and conservation and policy, it tends to be a gathering place for folks interested in that stuff. So those are probably the best places to find me. I mean, our YouTube channel, we've always got stuff going on there. That's Fresh Tracks. So, yeah, that's the easiest places to reach me.
Great, great. Well, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm glad we're making up for lost time.
Yeah.
That's watch out. Like I said, I'm headed your way. I'll give you plenty of notice on that. But it's been a lot of fun and very useful information. Randy Newberg, thanks so much for being a part of the Upland Nation podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Scott. And the next time I get out your direction, I'm going to purposefully look you up, and we're going to go get a cup of coffee or something.
Well, just listen for the barking dog.
Okay.
Hey, you take care now. Be safe this season.
Yeah, thank you too, Scott.
Oh, lots of fun, and we will do that again. And watch out, Randy, because I just might stop by and have a coffee with you. We've still got more to go here, including a way for you to maybe hit more birds with a quick fix. Yeah, it shouldn't be that tough. It's coming up after this word from Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School. I talk about hitting birds better. You can take a lesson from any of the hunter/instructors there. They know what works on the range, but they can also translate it to the field because they're out there too. And if you're looking for a Browning shotgun in particular, massive inventory in the gun room at midvalleyclays.com. All gauges, all configurations, lots of field grade guns, perfect for hunting. And then if you want to cross over and shoot some sporting, they're there as well. Make Dave Fiedler your gun guru. Go to him at midvalleyclays.com before you settle on a particular style or gauge. They've got the sub gauges well covered in their inventory as well. Dave can help you make your decision with a little bit more information and the right questions. Learn more at midvalleyclays.com. And when you get ready to hit the road, you want your dog to be as safe and comfortable as possible, because that makes you happy as well, and it also makes your life, well, at least slightly simpler. And RuffLand Kennels will help you do that. Everything from what I consider to be the best designed dog crates on the market. Chew-proof, easy to clean, doors that don't rattle, side doors if you want them, depending on what your rig is configured to do. All of that plus some great colors. Sign up for the email list so that you're in on every new release. Go to RuffLandKennels.com. Well, this week on Fix It, let's fix your shooting. Okay, try and fix it. At least, here's something that's worked for me. I talk a lot about choke tubes, and I will talk about them in a moment as well. But have you ever considered the distance you really shoot your birds at? Do you know how to do that? Have you ever patterned your shotgun? Take a look at your choke tubes and what constrictions you're using, and then go to the range and, hey, just get a refrigerator box and pace off 25 yards or thereabouts. You get out to 25 yards, you pop a couple shots, you might be amazed at how tight your pattern is. A tight pattern is good sometimes, but too tight means birds are going to get around that shot string. Yeah. So think about what you're shooting and how far you're shooting it. Most of the time we're going to hit birds at 20, 25, maybe 30 yards. 30 yards is a long way. You might want to consider opening your chokes. And if you're wondering how to practice that, here's one that I've adopted that's kind of fun. You use your dog's GPS collar when you're running him, even in training or just for exercise. Take a look at it every once in a while and see how far away he is. You may be surprised at how long a 30-yard shot really is. Pattern your guns, maybe open your chokes a little bit more, and practice your own range finding abilities with your dog's GPS collar. That's the Fix It segment. Hope it helps you bag another bird or two this season. Brought to you by TrulockChokes.com. Now, I told you about a special offer that Scott Trulock made just for us. If you own a side-by-side shotgun and you kind of like the aesthetics of that gun, you might not want those extended choke tubes. Well, Scott will make you a pair of flush choke tubes in 2028 or 410 at no extra charge. So if you're looking for a choke that is flush fit for your certain side-by-side in any of the gauges, call Scott. Go to TrulockChokes.com. Get the phone number, TrulockChokes.com. Call Scott. Tell him what kind of side-by-side you have, and they'll take care of you. That's TrulockChokes.com. Well, thanks to Randy Newberg and a very enjoyable first discussion. It won't be our last, Randy. Watch out. And thank you to all of our sponsors who make this possible. RuffLand Dog Kennels, Purina Pro Plan Sport, Dog Food, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, Trulock Choke Tubes, PointerShotguns.com, Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, Heartland Lodge, and HiViz Shooting Systems. If you will do me a big favor and tell one person about the program, that is how these kind of things grow, one listener at a time. And if you've got a moment, next time you're at Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating. I'm Scott Linden. Thanks so much for listening to the Upland Nation Podcast.